listen. Right. Oh, no, wait, listen, you're on camera. Listen, you're on camera. Right now. I didn't even do nothing, bro. Put your hands right there. Put me on.
The year is 2023, set in the United Kingdom. It was meant to be just another routine Wednesday in the busy heart of Cudden. Kids were laughing and talking on their way to school, completely oblivious to the nightmare waiting just around the corner. In a heartbeat, that morning calm would be shattered, replaced by panic, screaming, and blood. Let's talk about Elianne Andam. Born June 28, 2008. Her dad wrote Christian study guides and her mom worked for the NHS, both of them pillars of their local church community. Elianne grew up surrounded by faith and love, basically the center of her parents' world. Even as a toddler, she was a bundle of energy, always singing and dancing. Everyone who knew her described her the same way: generous, smart, kind-hearted, and deeply loved. By 15, she had blossomed into a confident, loyal young woman. She had her sights set on law school for her A-levels, dreaming of a career fighting for human rights. Her whole life was mapped out perfectly, and she was unstoppable, but she never saw the darkness coming for her. It all started when Elianne's best friend began seeing a guy from Cudden College. He was a bit older, a guy named Hassan. They had a summer fling, but the relationship turned toxic fast and didn't last long. Hassan cut it off with a brutal text message, telling the girl, "Your energy is dead. I'm not for a relationship. All the best." After that, he turned nasty whenever she simply asked for her stuff back. He even mocked her for wanting a teddy bear she'd left at his place. He told her straight up that he wasn't bringing it back and that she was wasting his time over a stupid toy. But the girl didn't realize who she was messing with. This wasn't just a bad breakup, she was dealing with someone incredibly dangerous. Nobody knew how twisted his mind really was, except maybe his own friend, who had received some disturbing texts from him around that time. He wrote, "The person you see, that's not me. It's a mask. The real me is evil, dark, and miserable." He even bragged, saying, "I can break people physically and mentally." Tragically for Elianne, he wasn't just talking tough. He meant it. On Wednesday, September 27, 2023, Elianne and her crew started their morning like any other school day. Except this time, they had a detour. Her friend had arranged to meet Hassan before class to finally swap their belongings. Elianne and another girl tagged along for moral support. It was supposed to be a quick, simple handoff. His clothes for her bear. They met in a car park, and at first, the vibe seemed okay. Elianne's friend kept her promise, handing over a bag with his clothes packed neatly inside. Hassan showed up with a buddy, smiling at the girls, but that smile was hiding his real plan. It didn't take long for things to go south. He showed up empty-handed. No teddy bear, no nothing. He had zero intention of giving anything back. The only thing he brought was hidden under his hoodie, waiting for the right moment to be used. He laughed off the girls' complaints and walked away with his bag, feeling smug about tricking them. But Elianne was the type to stand up for what was right, and she always protected her friends. Her dream of being a human rights lawyer wasn't just talk, she genuinely cared. She wasn't about to let this guy disrespect her best friend without doing something about it. It was around 8:30 in the morning. Acting on instinct, Elianne started filming a Snapchat story, narrating the situation as she followed him. She closed the distance, and while he was distracted, she grabbed the bag right out of his hand. At first, it seemed like a joke. It felt like a little victory for the girls. But the mood shifted instantly. When Hassan realized what she'd done, his face went from smug to pure rage. He snapped and charged at her. He'd been humiliated, and his ego couldn't handle that. He felt like a fool, and he wasn't going to let a teenage girl get the better of him. CCTV caught them sprinting down the street. Elianne held the bag tight to her chest, but Hassan was gripping a 12-inch kitchen knife he'd had concealed the whole time. He caught up to her. But he didn't just grab the bag back. He did something unthinkable. He pulled that knife and drove it straight into Elianne's neck. The blade tore a 12-centimeter gash, severing her carotid artery in one brutal strike. She collapsed, looking back at him in total shock and pain. She started begging for her life, but he didn't care. He stabbed her again, and again, and again. Reports say he struck her over 10 times with absolute ferocity. People nearby screamed at him to stop, but he just looked up with a blank stare before running off, still holding the bloody knife. A bus driver jumped out to help, doing everything he could to save her, but it was hopeless. The blood loss was catastrophic. Witnesses said her school uniform turned completely red. In a matter of minutes, Elianne was gone. Police and paramedics swarmed the scene, launching a massive investigation. But who was this kid? And why commit such a horrific, senseless murder over something so small? A life taken over a bag of clothes. Hassan was born September 6, 2006 in Uganda. His life started rough. His parents' marriage was filled with violence. His father was accused of domestic abuse, so his mother took him and ran. They resettled in London when he was just 3 years old. They called Cudden, South London, home, squeezing into a tight apartment where a single mother tried to raise him and his 3 sisters. His childhood was a mess of instability and cold shoulders, lacking both rules and love. By his own admission, he was raised on anger. That internal fury often exploded outward, resulting in violent assaults on his family and classmates that teachers immediately flagged as dangerous. Although he was sent to mental health professionals, the red tape led nowhere, and by 2018, he had become too volatile for his mother to manage alone. He was only 11 when she decided talk therapy wasn't the answer and shipped him off to a boarding school in Uganda, hoping strict discipline would straighten him out. The plan backfired completely. Instead of learning respect, he was subjected to torture, beaten with metal rods by the very staff supposed to keep him safe. Reports even describe a harrowing moment where he tumbled down a flight of stairs while frantically trying to outrun a beating. When he returned to the UK in April 2018, people barely recognized him. He was a hollowed-out version of his former self, traumatized and shattered. Dropped into a new high school in the middle of the term, the pressure cooker finally blew the lid off. The classroom turned into a crime scene waiting to happen when he flashed a knife and threatened to use it, terrifying everyone and earning a police caution. The slap on the wrist did nothing. As the months turned into years, his temper became a ticking time bomb that could detonate over the smallest slight. He terrorized the hallways, threatening kids with scissors and choking 2 different girls until they suffered serious injuries. Everyone walked on eggshells around him, yet the system treated him like a hot potato until social services finally stepped in during early 2019. Authorities found him alone at the house after his mother, completely burnt out, admitted she had lost all control over him. She packed up his life and handed him over to the state, but the foster system only darkened his mood as he failed to connect with any new guardians. One foster parent recalled a chilling moment when he threatened to butcher the family cat just because he was told no. In March 2019, a school field trip turned ugly when he pulled a blade on another student he thought was laughing at him. That was the final straw for mainstream education. He was expelled and sent to a specialist unit, but the violence didn't stop there. He assaulted staff, spat on teachers, and battered other students while every warning siren blared and nobody hit the brakes. Doctors eventually slapped a label on it: autism, ADHD, and conduct disorder, but those diagnoses didn't justify the monster he was becoming. By May 2021, officials signed off on a plan to send him back to live with his mother. It didn't take long for the chaos to return. Police were soon kicking down the door to find him barricaded in his room, smearing dish soap on the walls in a bizarre, manic rage. He had grown into a volatile young man sitting on a powder keg of untreated trauma and an explosive temper. The writing was on the wall in neon lights. He was going to kill someone, yet no one intervened effectively. He eventually signed up for a sports science program at Cudden College, painting a picture of a fresh start that was entirely fake. Beneath the surface, his demons were still driving, leading straight to the tragic explosion on September 27, 2023. Emergency crews were on the scene minutes after he plunged the weapon into Elianne's neck, but it was already too late to save her. As the manhunt began, the suspect was already on the move, fleeing the scene on foot with the blade still in hand. He wound up on a quiet residential street where he casually tossed the blood-stained 12-inch kitchen knife into a stranger's garden. He discarded the murder weapon like it was a piece of trash and carried on as if nothing had happened. He hopped on the 130 bus and then switched to the 64, sticking to his usual routine, but his luck had run out. Surveillance teams were tracking him, and the second his foot hit the pavement, a local officer spotted him. Body cam footage captured the end of the line. Cornered, sweating, and panicked, he tried to give the cops a fake name. He denied having anything to do with the brutal attack that had happened less than an hour prior, even as backup arrived. While they were cuffing him, the radio crackled with the worst news possible. Elianne was dead, and he was now being booked for murder. Detectives spent the next few days working around the clock, combing through 45 hours of security footage that left no room for doubt. The video clearly showed him stabbing an innocent girl, a horrific act driven by nothing more than his own white-hot rage. Even behind bars, his violent streak remained. When a fellow inmate called him out for killing girls, he didn't deny it. Instead, he screamed back through the bars, "I'll do it again! I'll kill your mother too! I'll do the exact same thing!" The case was so heinous it was fast-tracked to adult court, and he appeared at the Old Bailey on October 3, 2023. During the brief hearing, he sat stone-faced between officers, just feet away from the devastated family whose lives he had destroyed. Reports say he looked completely unbothered, and by the time of his plea hearing in March 2024, he was still digging his heels in. He pleaded not guilty to murder, trying to cop to a lesser charge of manslaughter by claiming the killing wasn't intentional. His defense team tried to play the autism card to claim diminished responsibility, but the prosecution wasn't buying it. They rejected the plea instantly, arguing this was a cold, calculated execution and promising to prove it to a jury. Bail wasn't just denied, it wasn't even on the table. The judge made it clear he would be waiting for justice from inside a jail cell. The trial officially kicked off at the Old Bailey in late 2024, with prosecutors laying out a truly disturbing case. They detailed how a petty argument over a teddy bear led him to grab a 12-inch kitchen knife from home and launch a brutal, frenzied attack. CCTV footage captured him chasing Elianne down and stabbing her in broad daylight. Witnesses, including his own ex-girlfriend, testified that he snapped and turned violent after Elianne jokingly grabbed his bag. She recalled him showing up in a mask and black gloves, suspicious gear that was totally out of character for him. Exactly as the security footage confirmed. She described the horrific moment he pulled the blade, lunged at Elianne, and stabbed her repeatedly while she lay defenseless on the pavement. The prosecution argued this was calculated, not accidental. The fact that he fled, ditched the weapon, and lied to police showed a clear consciousness of guilt. The defense brought in a psychiatric expert who claimed the teen's autism made him prone to emotional outbursts and unable to think rationally under stress. Their entire strategy hinged on the argument that Hassan's mental condition severely clouded his judgment that day. Crucially, Hassan never took the stand. He refused to testify, meaning the jury never heard his side of the story directly. Instead, his legal team relied on expert testimony, portraying him as a neurodivergent teenager who simply got overwhelmed and lost control. Fortunately, the prosecution tore that defense to shreds during cross-examination. They pointed out that he had the presence of mind to arm himself beforehand, run away, and attempt to hide the knife after the stabbing. Those actions show clear control, not a mindless meltdown. The jury was left to decide, was it murder or just manslaughter? Deliberations began on January 14th, 2025, and stretched into the following day. On January 16th, the verdict came down: guilty of murder. At 18 years old, he was looking at a mandatory life sentence. The judge lifted reporting restrictions, finally allowing the media to name him as Elianne's killer. Her family wept, relieved that justice had been served. On March 13, 2025, he was hauled back to the Old Bailey to learn his fate. Elianne's family delivered heart-wrenching victim impact statements, describing the loss of a bright, kind girl who dreamed of becoming a lawyer to help others. The killer just sat there, head down. No apology, no emotion, no sign of genuine remorse. In the end, he was handed a minimum term of 23 years before he can even be considered for parole. That means he will be locked up until at least 2046, and he won't get out unless a parole board decides he is no longer a danger. Elianne's death sent shockwaves through Cudden and London, her name becoming a symbol of both devastating loss and enduring strength. Her murder stands as a brutal reminder of how fragile life is and how quickly it can be snatched away. Music